Welcome back. We're keeping our focus on our quest for nationhood, continuing our theme of Nigeria's 57th independence anniversary. We've got Professor Tunde Adediran. He's a professor of political science. He's a former Minister of Education and a former Nigerian ambassador to Germany. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Let's start by asking you, could you tell us, yes, it's still the week of our independence. Where do you think we missed it? Because there are those who strongly believe that we're not on course, as we ought to, given the dream of focus of our founding fathers.
Well, we missed it because along the way, when we look back, we see that going back to pre-independence days, particularly when the conferences started, for us to have independence around 1953, Nigerians, the leadership at that time, the leaders were determined to create a society where there will be equality, where there will be justice, where there will be freedom. And of course, the expectations was that the development would be such a phenomenon that all African states, and indeed the third world, would be looking up to Nigeria as a model. We started well, the leadership was determined, but after independence, there was a setback. Indeed, there was that determination on the regional level that people, those who are in leadership positions, were doing their best to develop. One would have thought that at that time, we would have started building a real nation. In other words, transferring effectively our allegiances from ethnic groups, from tribes to nation, such that people will be thinking more in terms of the nation than their local peculiarities. At that time, two things went wrong. One, the vision that informed the planning for independence, at that time people were deviating. Secondly, by the time those expectations began to challenge the capacity of those who were there, there was not enough resolution on the part of those who are in charge to really tackle those issues. I'd give you two examples. Before the coup of 1966, which set us back, and of course the military rule, the leadership had become so concerned about their local areas, their regions, that they thought less about the national issues, about the nation, Nigeria. And as such, development was at the local level, at the regional level, quite all right. But then, that could have gone ahead along with what was going on at the national level. But little attention was paid, and the rancor that was there wasn't enough attention to really address those issues. If people are thinking more about the nation, about Nigeria, there will be more attempt, more effort concentrated at the national center, so that some of the problems that emerged, that led eventually to the problems of the mid-60s, the coup itself, and of course military rule, would have been avoided. Secondly, you also have a situation in which many people thought that by thinking more about their local peculiarities, about their regions, about their ethnic groups and so on, they will be doing a lot of good. But then it doesn't work out that way. You will diminish the nation in the process. You will reduce the potential, the capacity of the nation to develop as a country. And as such, in a federal setup, the constitution that we had even at that time was good enough. It gave some opportunity for those local areas, for those regions to develop. But that should not have led to the diminishing of the national center. Of course, one could say that, well, those people, because of the constitution, they were limited. There was so much to be done at the state level, but at the national level, some of what had to be done, we lacked the type of, you can call it capacity, leadership capacity, to really address some of those issues. But if the commitment has been there, and there have been enough collaboration, we will have been able to move at the pace we ought to have moved, and the country will have developed faster than we did at that time.
Does that then pardon me, Prof, to come in here. Does that then feed into the narrative where perhaps younger people think that the generation ahead of them, perhaps your generation, leaders from that generation, haven't seen where we got it wrong and then had the opportunity to fix it, just missed it?
One thing which we should admit is the fact that Nigerians are very resilient. They remain resolute over the years, even now. Well, the opportunity was missed to have developed Nigeria at that time. But then, the generation that came after independence, we were talking about my generation and so on, quite a number of things went wrong. The military that came in set us back a little bit, but that is no excuse for us not to appreciate the fact that within the limitations imposed by those circumstances, we should still have been able to identify our goals, the vision that informed the search, the fight for independence, will have propelled us to do what was needful at that time. Three things were needful. One is the determination to liberate our nation, economically, politically, and of course, socio-culturally. We tried to do quite a number of things at that time, but then the problem was there enough commitment on the part of those who are at the center? That is one. And then secondly, we also ought to have been resolute in terms of making sure that the goals that were set, the goals of development, we were having some growth, quite all right, but development will mean liberating the mind, educating Nigerians all over the place, and ensuring that the type of education we were giving will match the expectations, so that we do not just produce people who come out and are not particularly relevant to our development needs. Again, I should also like to draw attention to the fact that why we missed it was because rather than doing what ought to have been done at a particular time, we were always shifting the blame. But then those who shift blames on the leadership, I identify with them because leadership seems to determine quite a number of things. If we had gotten the leadership right, we wouldn't have been where we are. And of course, even right now, I believe that what we should continue to do as we continue to build upon the foundation laid is to ensure that the leadership lead. If the leadership leads, of course, we'll be able to amend the past, correct the mistakes of the past, and lay a new foundation. And that new foundation will mean addressing the problems of the nation that everybody knows. We give credit to Nigerians. I believe that Nigerians have been very, very positive in terms of identifying what the problems are. What we now need is to address those problems. Once the problems are identified, the problem is half solved.